Hey everyone, welcome to The Grind. As you can see, we are on Zoom today. A little Zoom edition for you this time. One of us has to deal with a little bit of isolation, not saying who it is, but I think you know them very well. So, anyways, we're
Yes.
not gonna let anything keep us apart from just catching up and talking about the message that we heard over this weekend. So, we
Yes.
wrapped up glory and suffering, which someone probably is suffering in isolation right now, but they can find glory in that. So, all right, before we get into it, let me just, do a little bit of quick recap. Basically, we're, seeing how there's nothing to be ashamed of our faith, that really the glory of the church comes by sharing in the faith of Jesus. And Pastor shared 4 points, basically the certainty of suffering for Jesus, the benefits, the attitude, and the comfort. All right, first question is this. Who have you seen suffered for Jesus and has responded so much like Jesus that it inspired you?
Wow.
Yeah, I think
Question number 1.
Yeah, right from the get-go. Let's go, Rico.
Yeah. I think, well, my eye doctor in Hong Kong, he was a missionary to Afghanistan in like the mid to late 90s. So yeah, I mean, it was not an easy country to go to even then, before all the stuff we know about Afghanistan now. I think on occasion getting shot at in his own home. Like he showed me a picture when he come back, like of a bullet hole near where his pillow is.
What?
Because so it's like it's where he would have been had he been sleeping at that time.
So he wasn't a target. It was just more like he just happened to be caught.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a dangerous country to live in. Yeah, I mean, he gave up a life of, I guess, relative comfort. City living in Hong Kong, really decent job, to go to Afghanistan because he was cold. So like he actually lived out his faith. And I think if we're talking like suffering and like it's all relative, but like if you go from a place like this to a place like the hills of Afghanistan, it's like it's a big sacrifice. So,
it's insane. Again, for me, it's also like again on a mission. We were on a trip to Indonesia, and we're at this church for people who converted from Islam, and also obviously would face persecution for their conversion because they jumped ship. And and I think their church, if I remember correctly, their church burned down during that time, and they were just meeting in someone's house or something, and so despite the unideal circumstances that they found themselves in, they still chose to meet, they still chose to worship God. I guess like when you sign up to be a Christian, you have, like what Pastor Red said, we have to be prepared for rejection and opposition, and it's something not to be surprised of. And it's not a matter of like, will I face persecution? It's more of like, when.
He said like suffering for Jesus isn't strange. It's like the norm.
Exactly. It's not like, let me just like it's not like can I just uncheck this option, please, to not suffer, and then the rest will be like all good.
How about no?
But it does come with the package, and I think we don't live in an era or a time where we are persecuted for our faith, and I cannot imagine, right? Like when we come to the time where we have to, like, do we denounce our faith, or do we not? And there's like that movie Silence.
Oh, dude, I watched that. I was gonna say that movie as well.
That is
Liam Neeson, right? That one?
And Andrew Garfield, and basically they have to either give up their faith or die. Like, what do you do then, right? And I think it was like the movie's like, oh, if you don't give up your faith, then the other person has to suffer. What do you do then? Like, do you show compassion to the person, like love your brothers, you love yourself, or you hold on to your faith, like, no, this is my fate, and then the other person suffers. Like, it's a tough situation to be in. but that's definitely a trial that I cannot imagine to be under. And First Peter 4:12, it says, let me just read it. Hold up. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. And so I guess next question would be, what fiery trials have you faced in life? And like, how did you navigate around it? Like, did you act surprised or accept it as part of Christian life?
I went through a period of a few years where I just like kept getting passed up like for promotion every single time. And like every single time they would give me the same reason.
What was the reason?
It would be in the last 2 months before performance review, you lost focus. It was always that same time frame and always that same reason. So I think after the third time, you kind of like smell something's up, right?
Can we be honest, Petrina? Were you the one giving the performance review?
No, this is not during my time.
Just kidding.
Throw her under the bus. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't at. It wasn't at ICA. So no.
I'm just
like,
all present company are safe.
Oh my god.
But
my fiery trial.
Yeah, because I mean, if you keep getting passed up for promotion, you feel like there's no progress in life, right?
Yeah.
You feel like you're getting nowhere. So yeah, I didn't really see the point of it until I left, which was that it taught me a lot of like patience and perseverance, and also like to also just like not focus on playing politics, and also just like look after the team that you're working with, because that's really more important, is like the people that you can affect around you, rather than like climbing a ladder, I guess, which is what everyone wants to do. And like, even when I first joined that company, that's exactly what I wanted to do, was like get as high as I could, as quickly as I could. But that was not, I guess, for that season, that was not what I was supposed to do. So
yeah, I mean, I gotta say, you are very patient, and you persevere. Look at how you handled me and Rico. So
yeah. So isolation has been a gift. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, guys.
I think for me, recently, I'm not gonna really disclose a lot of things, but recently there's a circumstance where I've been tested in my faith, in terms of my understanding about God and in how we live our lives and stuff like that, and to a point where it also reached a sort of like, I'm not gonna say that it's such a serious thing, but I've sort of had an anxiety attack as well again. Because of this circumstance as well. But of course, I'm also denying the fact that it might not be an anxiety, but it's just the fact that something is stirring up inside me, and it became sort of a trial. Well, it is a trial because I'm actually battling myself in a way in this situation. So, but I'm really thankful for God, because I do experience Him in such a different way every time this happens to me. Like, the situation always can be quite similar, but the way that God helps me and how he deals with me as well is quite different. And there's so many things that I don't even know about myself that he knows more, and it brings me to a new light in terms of my faith in him as well. So yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, like, when we're, tried and tested, like, that we come forth as gold. And that's one of my favorite verses actually in the book of Job, that we're not going to come out defeated, but kind of come out stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
I think trials are part of life, and Pastor was mentioning how a fiery trial it describes a process used to testing of metals, and the idea is basically being refined, right? And testing reveals our real faith. Basically, our true self comes out, right? Like, do you run away from your problems? Do you jump to conclusions? Like, what do you do, right? And basically, it has a very unique way of strengthening and purifying our faith. And I think, I'm sure all of us within our own trials have seen God in a different way. Like, how is he a provider? How is he, you know, a God that I can still rely on? How can I still have faith? How can I, you know, endure, you know, and like what Nathan said about the whole 2020 in hindsight, right? You realize that, okay, this is, I understand and I can see, you know, the good in it. And I'm sure, like, oftentimes, like, I don't know about you, but definitely when it comes to suffering, you know, I'm like, Jesus, can you come back now? Like, take me, Jesus, right now, so that I don't have to deal with suffering.
Make this stop.
Yeah, like, how about you come back now so that I don't have to, you know. We can't control, like, Jesus coming, going. That's dumb. But so here's my next question. How does God use fiery trials and tests to purify us by burning sin and folly out of our lives?
Well, you know how he talks about it. It's like it's a method of purifying metals, right? So, like, because I'm a nerd and I just like check some stuff out about this. It's the way that metal's forged, right? That it gets brought up to a certain temperature, and then the dirt in the raw material is actually melted and is hammered out. So it's heat and pressure, right? Which I guess is what a trial can feel like. It feels hot and you can feel under pressure, right? So what's left is like the real stuff. What's left afterwards is the real you, is the real faith that you have, right? So I think maybe the difference is that the metal doesn't have a choice, right? It reacts the way it reacts, but we can choose how we're going to react to a trial. We can choose whether to keep like our garbage in, or we can choose whether to like let it go. And then do you want to keep like living in sin, or keep like going back to those patterns that keep you away from God, or do you want to let it go and then actually embrace what God has given you, or what God has called you to be? I think that's, if I'm thinking of like an actual fiery trial or an actual like forging of metal, and that, I think that is the picture that I come up with anyway.
Wow, altar call, everybody, altar call. Pastor Nathan.
Okay, let's go for a response song.
Rico, lead us.
I don't know what song.
You have your guitar there?
I am bring my guitar.
Fight the stars. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nathan, when you're describing all of that, I was just thinking like Lord of the Rings, you know, like how to make the one ring.
Yeah, I mean, that is essentially the process, yeah.
I mean, like, you know, like I mentioned earlier, right? You know, when you test it, the true self comes out, and you see how you respond. And sometimes, like when I face trials and the way I respond, I'm a bit shocked at how I respond. Like, oh, the negativity, and I think I am thankful for friends who actually will speak truth, you know, because sometimes they need to just speak truth and just take you out of that situation and realize that what you're believing is false. Or even like sometimes God would speak to me through the word and highlight like, you need to place your trust in me. Or I think one of the things, one of the trials I've been through has tied in with, you know, my identity. You know, do I tie in with what I do? If you take away what I do, who am I? And and I think, you know, it's in that process where you realize that actually your identity is not based on your work. It's based on basically simply being a child of God. And I think it's in the trials that teaches me to realize I am unworthy and I'm a broken person, but with Jesus I am made whole, and to really hold on to him. And so yes, the pain can feel very real at the moment, the suffering can feel very real at the moment, but it's it's okay. And yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the challenge is basically our response when it comes to suffering.
Yeah.
And yeah, so final question, just to wrap up this discussion, is why is it oddly a good thing if we are treated like Jesus and suffered for Jesus?
I think for me, if one thing that is oddly good about it is the fact that it also sort of tells you that you are in the right track. Because you know that, yeah, these are I mean, like, just to be clear, what we're talking about suffering is the suffering for righteousness, right? And being in that side, you know that even though you are suffering, even though you are in a circumstance where you feel like you're about to give up, the Lord is with you as well.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the things that it's very reassuring that, I mean, like, of course now I'm saying that it's gonna be all right, but I don't know how will I react once that particular situation becomes really difficult and heavy. But I think just by this particular conversation that we have, for me, I just need to remind myself that these sufferings are gonna happen. I shouldn't fear, because the Lord is gonna be right by my side, because He indeed has experienced suffering as well, and it's okay. So yeah.
In verse 14, if you are insulted for the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rest upon you. So I think it's like the fact that in this time the Spirit of God is literally on you, which basically you have access to the strength and the power that you need to endure and to push through. And sometimes we forget, that that's happening, and we forget that Spirit of God is with us when we go through trials, because we get so focused on our situation that we overlook everything else that's going on.
Like the trial itself takes up all the space.
And I think I may have shared this example before. Again, remind me if I have or have not. Like, because I heard this one analogy that's definitely stuck with me for in my entire life. Is basically, you take like a 10-cent coin, super tiny, right? You put it to your eye, that's all you see. But then when you put like the 10-cent coin out, then it's basically very tiny compared to the entire room.
Oh, you never told that.
So compared to so basically your problems are like the 10-cent coin, because when it's right up in your face, that's all you see and that's all you can envision. But if you step back and put it in perspective, compared to everything else, in the grand scheme of things, it's actually small.
It's only 10 cents.
It's only 10 cents.
It's only 10 cents.
And and I think sometimes that's a good reminder for me, is that don't get caught up in all the trials and stuff. It's okay. Nothing to be ashamed of for Jesus. I think as we wrap up, the final thing I'll say is salvation is personal, but it's never private. And that's how we should live our faith. That this is Jesus. This is my life, and I know I've struggled with this, is that when I meet family members who are not Christian, and when I say I'm a pastor or I work at church, I can feel within me kind of wanting to hide, because I'm ready for their ridicule. I'm ready for them to be like, this girl, what is she doing with her life, working at church, and it's always an instantaneous response, for people who don't know, we're not Christian. When I say I work at church, it's something I struggle with sometimes.
It's always judgment is coming, but it's not God's judgment. So
it's
just tell them you are a tourist guide bringing them to the kingdom of God.
That's a great pivot point. I love going on traveling. So we're just traveling on the journey called life, and I'm a tour guide. Please join me in Petrina and Co. Company.
I know all the good spots.
All the good spots. I can show you what's up. The deep pits. You got to spend some time there just to figure out yourself. But welcome to my tour company. Well, that's a great pivot right there. Thanks, Rico. All right. Well, I think whatever we go through, suffering is not going to stop. We're going to face our own suffering in the future.
This is true.
It's true. But I think we can be encouraged that as we suffer, there's nothing to be ashamed of our faith, and that the Spirit of the Lord rests upon us.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's that. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you at our next grind. It is our Christmas series, so it should be exciting talking about Jesus,
Ding, 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 ding.
our
Hopefully,
King.
we'll be back in person.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you soon. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys. See you.